This year, it's my distinct pleasure to be allowed to introduce to you one of my dearest friends, a young man whose contributions are already too many to list, an innovator and deep thinker, a loyal friend, and a trusted advisor. Throughout his career, Steve has been focused on the relentless pursuit of improving our fireground capabilities and our fireground survivability. Coupling these two seemingly irreconcilable forces is something that Steve Kerber does with unbridled passion and absolutely brilliant insight. Having been raised in a firefighting family, Steve has from childhood been obsessed with this profession. He's been in love with the people who dedicate their lives to the service of others, and he has been in love with the science, research, and its application in real life. There are some dedicated researchers, and they provide their information to others to review. Then there are some practitioners, and they share their experience and their knowledge freely. And then there are some who combine those two critically important capabilities. Steve is the foremost example of that combination of street smarts and science smarts. Steve is able to communicate his scientific findings to firefighters in ways that others have never been able to do because of his experience as a firefighter. Steve is able to understand what drives firefighters to sometimes take the risks that are necessary in order to accomplish our mission. He not only understands our principles and our values, he lives them. Steve's a man of impeachable character and impeccable integrity and tremendous honor. Steve has been a trusted advisor to me and fire engineering. He's been an invaluable member of the FDIC advisory board, and most importantly, Steve Kerber has provided a role model for all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you a little bit more about Steve Kerber. He's the director of the UL Firefighter Safety Research Institute. He has led the fire service research education in the areas of ventilation, structural collapse, and fire dynamics. A 13-year veteran of the fire service, most of his service was in College Park Fire Department in Prince George County, Maryland, where he served up through the ranks to deputy chief. He received his bachelor's and master's degrees in fire protection engineering from the University of Maryland, and he's working on his doctorate in risk management and safety engineering from Lund University in Sweden. He's been appointed to the rank of honorary battalion chief in the FDNY. Steve has written exclusively for Fire Engineering magazine. He's presented at numerous conferences, FDIC, and international conferences throughout the world. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce to you the keynote speaker for FDIC International 2015, my dear friend, Steve Kerber.
I want to start out with a tough question. What do all these fire engineering talk radio hosts have in common? How about all the fire engineering bloggers? How about all the instructors that you're going to hear from over the next few days? They've all found their voices for fire service progress. They all have the guts to share their experiences, their opinions, to be bigger than their crew, bigger than their shift, bigger than their department. But why do they do this? They can be right or they can be wrong. They can be idolized, they can be ridiculed. Worst of all, they can even be made fun of on social media. But for some reason, they take that chance. Why? They could just be a quiet student of the fire service that's a dedicated, hardworking member of their fire department. But if everyone's going to be a student, Who are going to be the teachers? As a young student of the fire service, I grew up in a volunteer firehouse. It was a family thing. My grandfather was chief of my local volunteer department for 27 years. My dad was a line officer, president, now director of a fire training academy. My hero, and one of my biggest supporters, say hi to FDIC, Dad. Go ahead, stand up. Wait, come on, stand up. Thanks. At 18, I shifted off to college. At the University of Maryland, I spent 5 years living in a firehouse and studying fire protection engineering. Maryland has the only undergraduate program in fire protection engineering in the United States. And the College Park Volunteer Fire Department is part of the Prince George's County Fire Department, the largest combination fire department in the U.S. I learned fire dynamics during the day, and every minute I wasn't in class, I was learning fire dynamics in the street. College Park isn't your typical firehouse. They've got a live-in program. It's linked to the university, so members come from all around the country, and they rotate on a 4-year basis. With that much turnover, the system requires constant training on the basics and a constant discussion about what's the right way to do things, what's the right way to fight a fire. In the probationary training at the College Park Fire Department, there's a list of survival tips. At the top of that list read, if you do something different back at home, we don't want to hear about it until you learn how we do it and why we do it here. Answering that why is the challenge. Was it something that worked 10 years ago that no one at the firehouse even remembers? What was the context that proved that it worked? Was it just the way we've always done it? Is it still the most effective tactic? All tough questions. As I continue to gain experience and learn about fire, there were things that just didn't add up. Within a short period of time, I found myself accountable for firefighters that were as green as I was a few years earlier, and I owed it to them and myself to have answers. There weren't many fires that I went to where I wouldn't second-guess something that occurred, usually a decision I made. Did we break the right window? Did we vent the roof in the right location? Did we pick the right line? Did we choose the right search pattern? But how could I get another shot at it? It just haunts you. Every fire is different. I turned to my colleagues, my mentors, books, magazines, the internet. But with so many voices out there, you can find as many people suggesting that you do something that as you can. If you suggest that very same thing, you're going to die if you do it. So who do you listen to and why? Fast forward a bit. In 2001, I was working at the Maryland Fire Rescue Institute. Probably just trying to make a few bucks, get a leather helmet, get the next newest pair of gloves, because I figured that would make me a better fireman. It was there that I found my calling in life by choice, just absolute by chance. My boss asked me to go get the ladder truck from the station up the street and throw the stick to the roof of the training tower so we could have a class climb up. I went and got the truck, positioned it to the roof, and then a group of people that had absolutely no business wearing turnout gear and climbing a ladder started to pass me. Turns out this was the NIST Firefighting Technology Group, a group of researchers trying to get fire service experience to learn how to better serve their audience. I made some great connections, and by January 2002, I had a co-op at NIST. Those next 8 years were filled with learning and applying the science of firefighting. The more I learned what I didn't know. During that same time, I moved up through the ranks of the College Park Volunteer Fire Department, ultimately becoming its deputy chief. The more fires I went to, the clearer it became. Firefighting is extremely complex and difficult, and it's hard to learn on the fly while you're trying to execute a plan, perform tasks, and see the big picture all at once. Through my job at NIST, I got exposed to many fire departments from all over the world and saw how they operated and evolved. Everyone has their own experiences and forms opinions based on those, and they vary greatly. It's that diversity in thinking about the unknowns about fire behavior that drive me to continue to learn more and have an open mind. I mean, how come after 200 years of firefighting experience do we do things so many different ways? Everyone feels their way is best, otherwise they wouldn't do it, right? How come battalion chiefs in the same battalion on different shifts will expect very different operations on the fire ground? Fire academies just a few miles apart could be teaching very different tactics for different reasons. Who's right and why? No two fires are the same and no two response areas are the same, but there's many similarities no matter where you are in the world. Every fire goes out eventually, and usually no one gets hurt. But was the fire dealt with as effectively as possible with correct knowledge and experience feeding that operation? That's what I'm working towards. Working to get a science-based knowledge to firefighters that they can develop strategies, tactics, and tasks to be as effective as possible. And the great thing about science is that once you understand how things work, you can understand things that you haven't experienced yet. Because we can't experience everything. Firefighters don't have the opportunity to practice during real fires. On the flip side, our training environment doesn't replicate reality. So how do we know if our tactics are best? How do we try new ones if our training environment doesn't produce results that are indicative of what we're going to see in the field? That right there, that's the question that keeps me up at night. How do we answer that question? How do we prepare you the best for the future? You get one shot at a fire. There's no do-overs. You can't try out different things on real emergencies. And what looks better for you may be worse for the trapped occupant. What looks good from the chief's vantage point might be horrible for a crew operating inside the structure. And what happens when we get experience in an environment and that environment changes? People put different fuels in their homes. The floor plans change. We use different building materials. Or what if we introduce new technology to support our operations? Better turnout gear, better SCBA, new tools, positive pressure fans, combination nozzles. Do your tactics change? For some, it might be yes. For others, maybe no. It depends on the experience of a particular person, crew, company, battalion, department, region, state, even country. Why is that? But what if that experience was actually interpreted correctly, or maybe it was based on a misinterpretation or a myth? What has to happen until we realize that tactics based on myths and defy physics, we can't be following that? What if it's absolutely correct, but others don't think it's correct because they have experience that contradicts it, a certain tactic or a task? So many questions, how do we get answers? And whose voice do you listen to? Is it the FDNY veteran from the biggest fire department in the U.S. that's willing to share? What about the chief in Tokyo that's been to the most fires, the largest fire department in the world? Do fires burn different in Tokyo, or is their built environment so different compared to the U.S.? Is their staffing and equipment so different that we can't learn from each other? When's the last time you read a Japanese line of duty death report? I haven't. Why is that? Shouldn't we be trying to learn everything we can so that we're doing the best thing possible when called to do so? What is the best thing possible? I've been studying the fire service my entire life and full-time as a career for more than 13 years. And it's my mission to find these answers with all of you and to evolve the fire service. Personally, I've found my voice through full-scale experimentation, using sensors and cameras to paint a picture and tell a story. Also, bringing together fire service leaders with diverse experience, with open minds early in the process, keeping everyone involved in a transparent way, and getting the results out in a way that provides considerations that can be interpreted and implemented in a flexible way dependent on the needs of that particular department. This process is the fire service's process, and I'm proud and humbled to be the voice of it. In 2009, I got a great opportunity to continue research at UL. Part of a small team, lucky to have the backing of a company that has a mission of making people safer through safety science. We've leveraged grant funding from the Assistance to Firefighter Grant Program, and we're trying to tackle fire service questions one at a time to provide clarity to the ongoing conversation. In some cases, we learn what we don't know. But we always do this with firefighters from across the country and many times around the world. They ask the questions, they design the experiments, and we put it all together. One would think after 200 years of firefighting experience, we'd know all the answers. In some ways, we have all the answers. Just depends on who you ask. Some parts of the country will say that, we knew that, quit wasting money on research. Other parts of the country, man, we never thought of that. We should try this. We should train on this particular way. But one thing that I have experienced that we have yet to run a series of experiments where we haven't been surprised by some of the outcomes. So over time, we've opened a dialogue and tried to create a common language that we can all use to discuss firefighting. We've taken fire dynamics and we've simplified it. Showed how it applies to the fire ground without dumbing anything down. Many firefighters ask to be seen as blue-collar, simple, not intelligent. They say, oh, I'm just a fireman. That could not be further from the truth. That's not an image we want to put forward. The future of the fire service is going to require critical thinking firefighters working together to solve problems. And there's going to be no shortage of problems. We need to find the answers. To get those answers, we need partnerships. Partnerships across the fire service, across geographies, and across disciplines. There are experts in fields like engineering, psychology, physiology, mental health, medicine, data analytics, marketing, communication, and many others that the fire service needs to communicate with and ask for help if we're going to evolve. We're not going to understand cancer in the fire service unless we quantify our work environment and make medical sense of it. We aren't going to effectively show the importance of the fire service if we only provide justification around loss and risk. We need to partner with statisticians that will allow us to discuss financial impact. Communication experts will make sure that that message is delivered accurately and on point. Firefighters aren't going to do this alone. The fire service is a profession of lifelong learning. The world changes, the hazards change. We have to challenge everything, ask why, and have that genuine curiosity. We can't have the desire to prove someone wrong or point fingers. We need to have the desire to get better. Constructive disagreement is what we need in the fire service. With millions of collective years of firefighting experience in over 30,000 fire departments, seems to be many disagreements with the best way to do things. We need to study these disagreements, try to understand where these differing beliefs come from and under which context they might be applicable. Fire service needs to stop reading bullet points, looking at pictures, and thinking they have the information that could be gained in an 8-hour class. The bullet point should spark an interest for you to want to know more. But you have to want to know more. No one's going to do that for you. We also need to take the emotion and the rhetoric out of many of our discussions. Getting louder doesn't make your argument any better. We need to work together to understand when things work and when they don't. That's how the fire service is going to progress. I think I can make the fire service 1% better, and I'm not going to slow down. We're going to keep pushing, and you should too. What are you going to be known for? What are you going to do with your voice? Have you started conversations in your company, your department, your state, your region? Have you done so in a respectful way that brings people together? I think we need to create a legacy of intelligent professionals, critical thinking firefighters that continually work to get better and know why, so we evolve the right way. Let's build on a foundation of 200+ years of firefighting experience in a way that the firefighter's workplace will evolve. We can make sense of it because it's going to evolve every day. There are a number of recent examples for having a voice for fire service progress. In the 1970s, as a result of the America Burning Report, NIST conducted some good research with the fire service, examining many topics to better understand firefighting. NIST had all but forgotten about the fire service until a fire protection engineer named Dan Majorkowski came around. A chance encounter with a Maryland fire service legend, John Hoagland, has set a series of events in motion that are still going strong today. Dan, with no contacts in the fire service at the time, decided he would dedicate his life work and his voice to work with the fire service. The LA County Fire Department is a great example of opening up and sharing their voice for progress with the world. They could have kept their videos, their training, their SOPs internal, but they didn't. Chief Derek Alconis could have been scared that other departments would have poked holes in his content. They could have waited for 2 years hoping that they would perfect the message, but it may not have gotten there. They could say, who cares? But the hundreds of thousands of views on their video shows that people care and people are watching. They could have said it's too hard and too expensive to train their members because they're too spread out over 2,200 square miles. But they're using innovative ways to get the message out, to track progress, watch the metrics, study the reports, and they're showing that it's working. FDNY could have said, hey, we've got 11,000 members. We go to the most fires. We know how to fight fires. They can continue to say that line of duty deaths are fluke incidents, but they didn't. They reached out to a group of individuals that many say are just a bunch of scientists and don't know anything about firefighting. Jerry Tracy could have said that the Vandalia Avenue fire that claimed the lives of 3 firefighters was an anomaly, but he didn't. He pushed and he pushed for answers over several years. Through his leadership, he brought in additional voices and minds like John Cerullo, George Healy, Tom Galvin. That collective voice became 2 series of experiments in New York City, additional tools for the FDNY, more knowledge about wind-impacted fires that's been shared around the world. Eric Roden, he's showing how to drive progress through the use of data. He was partnering with some of the best universities out there on big data before that became a buzzword. From forecasting workload to predicting fire incidents to identifying factors that influence response times. Eric's been pushing the boundaries of data analytics in the city of Milwaukee for a long time. And big data is showing politicians what the reality and landscape really looks like, and it's going to play a key role in moving the fire service forward. Sean DeCrane, he stepped up to be the voice of the fire service in the codes. No one wants to sit in hours upon hours of code hearings, but Sean does because he has our back. If you're in a single-family house with a protected lightweight ceiling, you owe Sean for that. And as new hazards emerge, like tall wood buildings or large-scale energy storage systems, you can bet Sean's looking out for your safety in a code arena that the fire service is well underrepresented in. My last example comes from Sweden. In 2008, Stefan Svensson took his voice internationally and invited firefighters from all over the globe to his fire academy to begin a dialogue about firefighting, research, and science. I was lucky enough to be one of those firefighters, and that dialogue hasn't stopped. His plan was simple: put firefighters in a room and see what happens. We all used our voice for fire service progress, each one of us from many different countries, and we found out that we were much more alike than we were different. Efforts like this are needed more often, and if we're going to move forward, we don't have to go further than our computer to begin that dialogue. And I wouldn't be here up on this stage if it wasn't for a group of open-minded fire service professionals that have used their voice to push me and my team forward to make sure that we're moving the fire service in the right direction. I want to take a moment to acknowledge them as they scroll on the screen here. The UL Firefighter Safety Research Institute's advisory board keeps challenging us to do more and drives us to do research with the fire service and not for the fire service. I carry on their voices as well. I've asked many questions, and there's some very simple answers to all these questions. The fire service is the greatest profession in the world, and all these people want to leave it better than they found it. We all sit here because of the millions of firefighters that came before us that shared their voices for fire service progress. They taught us lessons, gave us the desire to face future challenges, and there are many. Firefighter effectiveness is an evolution. There's no one answer today, and we aren't going to solve it tomorrow. It's a process that's ongoing, and we all need to be invested in it. This was talked about when the fire service began, and we're here right here today discussing it again. Our work environment's evolving in a very dynamic way. And if you follow the UL research, you'll know this, so I'm not going to lecture you on all that. We're learning more about what firefighting does to our bodies over time. Cardiovascular, carcinogenic, psychological challenge. We're going to tackle those through partnerships and relationships with other professions. The best place to start those relationships, right here at FDIC. We need to build these partnerships and relationships for current firefighters and firefighters of future generations. I am here to appeal to those of you in the audience who have an idea or a question, and you haven't said it out loud because you're scared of who might hear it. Have the courage to make your voice heard for fire service progress. And as you sit in the classroom over the next few days and learn from the best voices out there, figure out how you are going to develop your voice and leave the fire service better than you found it. Thank you, and be smart out there. Thank you.
Where's your dad?
Right there with the camera.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve's dad. They say that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I think another round of applause for Steve's dad. So I'm going to give them up. Okay. So, and this is great. So how into it are they? They own their own tiller.
It's a snorkel, not a tiller. Come on.
I was trying to build you up. Ladies Kerber.
Thank you.